Hello students, today we are going to be writing equations from tables. Don't forget as you go to take notes and do the survey once you are done with the video. So in class the past couple of days we have been we've been creating tables from equations and then graphing those points from our table. Now we're going to start going backwards and I'm going to give you a table of values and you're going to have to write the equation from it. The form that we're going to write our equations in is slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. You may have seen this before. All the equations that we have dealt with so far have been in slope-intercept form. A couple of things about slope-intercept form. The m value is called our slope. That is our change in y divided by our change in x. So anytime we're talking about our slope, when I talk about change, think about our y or our coordinate plane. So here's our x-axis, here's our y-axis. When we talk about our slope, we're talking about our change in our y values, so that's the coordinate that's going up and down, and then divided by our change in our x values. When we're looking at a table here, that change is what that pattern is in our y values, and then what that pattern is in our x values. And then the b value, the second value that we need to write an equation, is the y-intercept. That's where our graph crosses the y-axis. So anywhere our graph crosses the y-axis, that's going to be our b value. So here are the steps that you need to write down when we are creating an equation from a table. First thing we want to do is always check to make sure the x values are in ascending order from top to bottom in the table. So as long as our x values go from the smallest values on top down to the bottom and they're in order, then we can proceed forward with the steps. Our second step is to identify the change in the y values. So if we're talking about our table, our y values are on the right side and we want to find the change in those y values. Remember our slope formula, we want to find the change in the y, so that's why we want to find that first. Our third step then would be to find the change in our x values. And again, when we're finding these changes, it's just the pattern. What pattern do we notice in the y values? And then we're going to divide that by the pattern we notice in the x values. Now, these little triangles here are just shorthand for change. So if you would rather write out change, that's fine. But these little triangles just mean change. The next thing we want to do is identify where the y value, what the y value is when x equals 0. So you want to find in your table, that's why we always have the 0 in our table, where does our x value equal 0? What is our y value? That's going to be our b value when we write the equation. Then the last thing to do is just substitute those values in. So we'll substitute a value in for m, which is the change in y divided by the change in x, whatever that ratio is there. And then the b, where our x value is 0, what is our y value? That value is going to go in for b. So let's do an example. First thing we want to do, check to make sure our x values are in ascending order, which they are here. We go from -1 to 0, 1, 2, 3. So we have an order in our x values. Our second step is to find the change in our y values. So as we look down on these y values, what is the change happening in the y values? Well, we see here that we go from 1 to 6, so we're adding 5. Then we go from 6 to 11, so we're adding 5. 11 to 16, adding 5, and 16 to 21, adding 5. So in that formula, our change in our y values is going to be a positive 5. Our next step is we want to find the change in our x values. So if we look at our x values, as we go down, what's happening to our x values? Well, we notice to get from -1 to 0, we add 1, 0 to 1, add 1, 1 to 2, add 1, and so on and so forth. So since the change in our x values is 1, that would go in the denominator of our ratio here. And then we always want to simplify our ratio, so 5 divided by 1, that gives us a positive 5. Our next step here was to find the b value, which is our y-intercept. The b value, whenever x equals 0, what is our y value? That's what we're looking for here. So in this case, when x equals 0, our y value is 6. So our b value is going to be 6. Now we're going to substitute our values into slope intercept form. So we have y equals 5, which is our slope, x, and then our b value is a positive 6, so it's going to be plus 6. And that's the equation we're looking for. Another example, first thing we want to do is find the change in our y values and divide that by the change in our x values. So as we look down our y values here, we go from 1 to -1 to -3 to -5 to -7. So each time we are subtracting 2. So our change in our y is going to be -2. We're going to divide that by our change in x. So if we look at our x values, we see we're going from -6 to -3 to 0, 3, then 6. So each time we are adding 3. So that goes in the denominator. And to simplify this, well, 3 cannot go into 2 evenly, so we're going to keep this as a fraction as -2 over 3. Next thing we want to do is find our slope y-intercept. Sorry, that was our slope. Now our y-intercept. When x is 0, what is our y value? Well, in this case, our y value is a -3. So our b value is -3. So to write our equation, we're going to have y equals -2/3 x. And since it's a -3 in this case, it's going to be -3. And that's our equation. Make sure any questions you have you bring to class tomorrow so we can answer those. Also make sure you do the survey. If you cannot see the survey on your website or you do not have the internet access at home, here are the survey questions. Write down your answers and I will check them tomorrow.